for the Connect. So I ran to GameStop to get a Connect, and she ran to Old Navy, didn't get it. So we get out of both those stores. Then we had to go to Toys R Us and wait in line for an hour.
Won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience Live. This is Sunday, November 28th, 2010. I'm Matt Dillahunty, joining me, Jenn Peeples. Welcome. You've been under the weather-ish?
I have a horrible cold.
Oh boy, stay on that side of the, there's like an invisible wall right here. So this is a kind of quiet post-Thanksgiving Sunday. We got a limited studio audience, and I have no idea how many callers we're going to get. And I didn't even bring any notes. You're getting me completely off the cuff, even with regard to the announcements. This program is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. For more information about the ACA, you can visit the website, www.atheist-community.org. You can also find our other program, The Nonprofits, which is an audio podcast, no video. And you can go to nonprofitsradio.com for information about that program. It's PROPHETS, Nonprofits Radio. We were not live yesterday. We will be live again. We're supposed to be live next week, and I just realized that there's two major conflicts next week. So there may not be a nonprofit show next week. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain of it. So we'll push that a week. And things may get sketchier on the holidays, but we appreciate everybody's patience. And the show is, in fact, back. And we may be shifting it to every week as often as we can. In addition to those efforts, the ACA also hosts a lecture series the first Sunday of every month at the Austin History Center, which would be next Sunday, but we're not having the lecture next Sunday. Instead, on Saturday, Sean Faircloth from the Secular Coalition for America will be in town, and I'll let Jen give you more details on that in just a minute. Additionally, next Sunday, if everything goes as planned, author Darrell Ray, who has been on the show before, will be in town and on the show with me to talk a little bit about how religion perverts sexuality, among other things. And we'll be taking your calls. As always, this is a live television, live call-in television program. We'll have the number posted up in just a minute. We've moved to the bigger studio, so if you had the old number, it's no longer correct. And you'll see the new number in just a minute, and I'll read it off. There it is, 512-472-2255. We've already got like 3 people on the line, but I wanted to let you talk about Sean Faircloth's visit a little bit.
Yeah, Sean Faircloth, as Matt said, he's the executive director for the Secular Coalition of America, and he's going to be talking about a secular vision for America. We originally planned to have this on campus at the University of Texas, and that fell through as of just a few days ago, so we're shifting the venue. We will now be at the First Unitarian Universalist Church. Excuse me, sorry, I do have a cold today, so anyway, so we're going to shift the venue. It's going to be at the First UU Church, and that's going to be at 5:30 p.m. on Saturday. And his talk will probably go about an hour, and then we'll have some question and answer. If you live in the Austin area, please check with our website. We will be updating the meetup notice to reflect the new venue, and also we'll probably be tweeting that and putting out more information about where to get to us. But we'd like it very much if you would either contact the TV list or co-chair at atheist-community.org and let us know if you're coming. So if you're in the Austin area next weekend, we'd love to have you at this event. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Sean's an excellent speaker.
And I'll be talking probably to Claire with CFI so that other folks in the area find out about this. And we need to spread the word because the venue has changed. So we kind of got caught by surprise a little bit. So we're shifting gears. And having met Sean a number of times now and spoken to him at the Texas Free Thought Convention, I'm excited about his decade-long plan for the secular community to take
Yes.
back America. And if, for those of you who'd be interested in hearing more about that, please come on down to the event. Also, now that the first of the holidays and the holiday season is out of the way, I was hoping, I don't know, there may be a call coming in. I didn't hear back from Dave Silverman, but American Atheist has got their billboard up, and there was coverage, I guess, on Fox News either this morning or yesterday morning. I saw the video clip today about that as well. And in either just before the Christmas holiday or just after the Christmas holiday, we'll be planning on restarting the Godless Gamers board game, card game, miscellaneous party game event. That'll be at My Best Place. And if you're interested in participating in that, just send an email. Probably be better to send it to president@atheist-community.org or even info at either one, so that we keep it off the TV list, because I'm just compiling a list of people to email and let them know about the event. But we got full lines, and I don't know if you had something you wanted to talk to real quick.
It actually kind of goes along with Sean's vision for a secular decade. I was looking at some articles in Christianity Today, because I think it's important to go and take a look at, maybe how, since Christians are the dominant religious group in this country, kind of look at how they perceive this mass exodus from Christianity that people are doing. And so this article is pretty interesting. It started out with the usual quotes about people leaving the church, and then they call them the leavers, okay, as opposed to believers. Anyway, so the leavers, yeah, they quote the usual statistics about how the number of people claiming no religion nearly doubled between 1990 and 2008. It also cites statistics like 22% of 18 to 29-year-olds claim no religion, and that's up from 11% in 1990. And some additional stuff like 73% of those who leave were from religious homes, and 66% of them describe themselves as deconverts. So in looking at all of these numbers, there's almost this sense of not really panic, but a growing awareness that this is a serious issue for Christianity. And this guy that wrote this article, his name is Drew Dyke, and he categorizes leavers into 6 categories. And he admits that this is not a very precise way of doing it, but he looks at sort of like broad categories. So you've got the postmodern people, the recoilers, which is an interesting group, because I think that's probably one that people are really familiar with because of the news about abuses by pastors and things like that. So these are the people that have had a negative experience in the church. Modernists, which actually is the category I think that most of us fall into, that we've examined the evidence in favor of religious claims, and we found it lacking. The neo-pagans, those who go from Christianity to some kind of, earth-based religion or whatever.
Woo.
Yeah. The rebels, that's kind of the youthful rebellion against the parental views. And then the drifters, and that's those who don't really make a conscious decision to reject their beliefs. They just sort of drift away from it and stop going to church. Yeah,
religion stops. Their religious beliefs stop being relevant to like their daily lives and things.
Right.
And I think there's some interesting notes in those categories and how they interrelate. Because I've talked before about how I think that a period of distancing from the constant reinforcement that a lot of people get in their religious beliefs, where everybody in their family is a believer, everybody, they're in church all the time. When you get away from that constant reinforcement and you drift away, I think it demonstrates something very significant about how religions manage to keep people, and how it's not tied to the truth of the religious claims.
Exactly.
That is very much social and kind of interdependent.
Right, and it requires regular reinforcement. And it's pretty clear that, because when they talk about how There was a Barna Group study that said approximately 80% of those raised in the church will be disengaged before they reach age 30. And I think those people who become disengaged comprise a very large part of the people who at some point ultimately reject religion altogether. And that kind of speaks to the idea that this requires regular reinforcement. You know, if you indoctrinate kids into religion early on, you still have to reinforce it, because once they get out in the world and they start learning things,
Right.
suddenly it doesn't make sense. And I found it really remarkable that this, one of the groups here, actually, the kids stopped going to church between 18 and 22. That's where the biggest bulk of them, about 70%, will stop going to church. It's about the time they get to college.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
join the military.
Yeah.
Or anything else that takes them away from that constant, you know, that environment where this is just what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then he goes on to talk about the church's typical responses, and it's I say the church, it's not necessarily like a formal response, but typically people within the church, their typical responses are judgment. You know, they launch into these sermons about, you know, what Jesus did for you and all this stuff, and or they just fail to engage at all.
Yeah, and it's one. I think it's one of the reasons why we've seen a rise. Although I think it's in decline now, but at least in recent years, in the last 15 or 20 years, of megachurches that have a more hip, almost secular in many cases, service with younger ministers who will get up in jeans and a t-shirt and play guitar, play some secular song that they will then try to spin as religious. We went to Gateway here, I guess it was 3 years ago or so, and you know, they were playing a song that was popular on the radio, and then did it in a way where they respun it as if it was a religious song, which I have to admit, at least made the service much more enjoyable. I would have rather listened to that than, you know, oh, come, all you know, whatever.
Yeah.
The old rugged cross.
Well, in this article, he actually cites that as one of the problems with the, you know, recent churches, because in his view, it inoculates people against what he considers to be a genuine faith. It's like, well, yeah, you know, if real life inoculates you against these fanciful claims, then, well, so be it.
It's kind of twofold. I think that some of the more secularized services in the megachurches and things were done to try to curtail this problem that they've seen happening. And I do agree with him in the sense that I think it contributes to it, because what do we see happening in kind of the moderate and liberal Christian community? And that is this idea that that the tradition part is irrelevant, and that, yeah, we've had all these discussions about biblical contradictions and theological, you know, positions, but what really matters is, you know, your personal relationship, etc. And once you take that step and put it on people's heads, then they are allowed, given the kind of the freedom, to freeform create their own theology. And you know, recently I've been in an email conversation with a young lady who is LDS, but she's not an LDS in any type that I've come across before. And she's actually trying to put together a kind of a thesis on her blog showing how all religions are correct on some level about, you know, the fundamental points. And what we're seeing is the building of new kind of homogenous religious structures that, you know, I'll applaud them all day long for being far less fundamental and damaging than the traditional elements of religion, but they're still false. And the thing is, you don't want to poke at them too hard, because this may be some people's pathway to reality.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's one of the things that John Loftus has said. I think it was John Loftus has said a couple times that one of the things that has kept Christianity alive for so long is its ability to adapt to new environments.
Yeah.
So the truth claims are still, you know, very much in play, but you know, it just adapts.
And this is nothing new, by the way.
No.
I'd recommend, and I have before, Bart Ehrman has a book called Lost Christianities.
Yes.
That is a really excellent book at addressing and it's valid, the title, Lost Christianities, different views of Christianity that existed in the formational period in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries that fell by the wayside or were obliterated by the more popular or dogmatic or authoritarian versions.
Of course, if you read the Bible correctly, you can get 4 different views of Christianity just from reading the Gospels.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, to kind of wrap this topic up here, in the article, the author talks about some possible responses. He hits on the typical responses and how they tend to push people away, and he also acknowledges a quote from this report at the 2008 American Sociological Association meeting that said that the most frequently mentioned role of Christians in deconversion was in amplifying existing doubt. So Christians come in without any real answers and dive right in because they've prayed on it and they know what to say. And it really tends to just push people further away. And this is where the article gets really kind of, you can almost sense this sense of resignation that this hemorrhaging will continue and all they can do is slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And he offers some books for reaching the unchurched and pretty much wraps it up with a statement that, in my view, tells me he misses the whole point here. So I'll just read you what he says at the very end here. It says, this means viewing their skepticism for what it often is, the tortured language of spiritual longing. And once we've listened long and hard to their stories and built bridges of trust, we will be ready to light the way back home. And what that tells me is like, no, it's not the tortured, the tortured language of spiritual longing. It's...
skepticism isn't language, it's not tortured, and it has nothing to do with spiritual longing.
And...
I'm just baffled.
Yeah, I was looking at that thinking, okay, you just totally missed the mark completely here. It's not the delivery. So, changing the way you do the church services or whatever is not going to fix it. It's not the delivery, it's the message. The message doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there were people who were talking about the most frequently mentioned role of Christians in deconversion is in amplifying doubt. And I think one aspect of that is something that I've also seen in the last 24 hours in email with a gentleman who I'll take at his word that he is in fact a young earth creationist. One of the problems of talking with young earth creationists is that you have no idea if you're actually conversing with somebody who believes what they're saying or if it's somebody trying to pretend, because the beliefs are so outrageous and so outside the bounds of reality that somebody could be making it up, but there's still somebody who believes this. And so it was fallacy after fallacy, starting at the beginning with, I have a professor who said that people who live in the city tend to believe less in a God than people who live out near nature where they can see God's handiwork. Yeah. And I was like, wow, how many fallacies are in there? This appeal to your professor. I mean, I have a professor who said that people who don't understand science and skepticism are more likely to believe in a God than those who don't. Yeah. It's, making that kind of appeal is irrelevant. But the other thing is that there's an assumption in his claim that the people out by nature, whether that's their reason for it or not, managed to get it right. Maybe it's the case that, they're less conversant with science and skepticism. Maybe there's a million other reasons, but none of it goes to whether or not, to the truth of the claim that a God exists. And it followed on from there with arguments for a young earth, like, well, the sun is shrinking, and if it would have been around for billions of years, like science says, then it would have ceased to exist a long time ago, which is obviously false in that it assumes a constant rate of the sun decreasing, which is not demonstrable, and it's all based on like a single study that we've never even confirmed that the sun is in fact shrinking. Right. So it's just, and to their credit, and also as a bit of a laugh, Answers in Genesis has a portion of their website that it lists, specifically it's titled, I think, Arguments We Think Creationists Should Not Use. Right. And it's a bunch of traditional creationist arguments that have been so thoroughly debunked by scientists that it is embarrassing for people to use them. Now, when we talk about people amplifying doubts, it's this self-assured confidence that I know the truth and I'm going in with my presupposition, and therefore everything I discover confirms it. Oh, I heard somebody say that the sun is shrinking. Well, of course the Earth is only 6,000 years
Right.
old, without ever actually investigating. And then when they go out and when they email atheists, they just kind of look ridiculous. When they email scientists, they look even more ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when they give this information to other Christians as a means of preparing them to defend the faith, they're doing their religion a disservice, but I'm overjoyed when they do it, because
Yeah.
you build somebody's foundation, the foundation of their beliefs, on something that is so absolutely flimsy that it is really, really easy to expose that doubt and that uncertainty and the fallacies, and then get them on a path that maybe makes more sense towards reality. But so we've got full calls, and I know there's somebody on here from Bulgaria.
17 minutes already.
Ruben from Bulgaria.
Oh, it's me.
Hey,
Oh, hi.
thanks for waiting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Thanks for
come
waiting.
Oh, hi. This is my first time, and I'm lucky because I have two of my favorite hosts.
Oh, thank you.
I'm an atheist. I have, the main reason I'm calling is actually to get advice from you guys, because I've been arguing with religious people about certain issues recently, and sometimes I just feel stuck after certain things that they say. So the thing I'm calling about is religious teaching, whether it's child abuse or not. So I presented my, the general arguments that people usually give, that this makes children think less critically, and in the more severe forms, it can even lead to children being totally disconnected from reality.
Right.
So the main criticism I got, and some of that criticism came from atheists, was that, first of all, by calling religious indoctrination child abuse, I'm watering down the actual word, because child abuse should be reserved for more serious actions, like physical abuse, rape, and so on. And also they told me that the legal definition of the word is what should be taken seriously. So child abuse should be something punishable by crime, and they asked me, so do you want to punish parents who teach their children religion the same way you punish, parents who rape their children? Should you take away children from those parents? And, my main point was that it should be not an all or none phenomenon, but rather, there are severe forms of child abuse and
Sure.
light forms.
Yeah.
Sure. Real quickly, and I don't know if we're getting an echo because I heard background noise, but there's a couple of things that we need to kind of hit real quick, and one is that religion isn't one thing. Not all religious teachings are the same, and not all religious teachings have the same impact. So it's kind of dishonest to discuss religion as a whole in this context. And also,
Yeah, sure.
the same thing is true for child abuse. It doesn't always take on the same forms or have the same degree of consequences. Beating or raping a child, those are clear examples of child abuse, but there's mental abuse as well.
Yeah.
And I would say that if you spent the first 5 years of your child's life teaching them that green was red and red was green as some kind of sociological experiment or whatever, that's something that can be repaired later on fairly easily, but it is a form of child abuse. For the people who are saying that claiming some religious indoctrination is child abuse is watering it down, they simply don't understand the impact that people can have on children in their formative years. And we're not saying that teaching somebody about, the Noah story is child abuse. The people who are identifying specific religious teachings as child abuse are talking about things like teaching a child that they're born bad, that they are inherently evil, that they are destined for hell. And if you go back to the Texas Free Thought Convention interviews that I did, Marlene Winnell has written a book, and she's a psychologist who's got a practice and has been specifically dealing with people suffering from something that she's called religious trauma syndrome. I dare those people who are saying that this isn't child abuse to go up to those individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who have been atheists for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, who are still traumatized and paralyzed by fear because they have been ostracized from their support structure and their family and friends, and because they still have nightmares about claims of hell and other things. You're right to point out that the fallacies that are used to bolster religion are harmful to a developing individual's brain, because it sets up a barrier between them and an actual discovery of reality. It prevents them from exercising critical thinking skills. Now, the idea that we need to punish a rapist equally to somebody who's abusive in tone is just silly. I mean, there are people who have their kids taken away for some period of time because the home environment is not conducive to raising a child, but they get them back. You don't give them back to a rapist. So it's just kind of absurd to me that people would think that religion needs to be one thing, child abuse needs to be only one thing, and the punishment for child abuse needs to be only one thing. There's a broader spectrum here.
Yeah, I think the people that are claiming that somehow this has to be on the same level as rape or physical abuse of a child in order to qualify as abuse, I think they're the ones engaging in a straw man argument here. I think there, as Matt said, there's different levels of abuse, but I would also argue that if, for example, in the Catholic Church, where you set the priests up as like the ultimate moral authority in the church, and you tell kids that they have to submit to these guys in robes, and whatever they do is coming from God, and then this guy abuses them. Essentially what you've done is you've set up a child to accept this authority figure who doesn't really warrant that kind of acceptance, but you've really set a kid up for abuse. And especially when everyone in the parish is so deferential toward these guys, and everybody is so busy protecting the church that they forget that they're supposed to be protecting their children.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of religious teachings are on par with the level of harm in a different realm, and that is with regard to anti-vaxxers. They are intentionally compromising the physical immune system of their children, thereby poisoning the rest through herd immunity. And the people who are teaching their children the sort of anti-critical thinking skills and dogmatic assertions about religion are compromising their children's mental immune system and making them susceptible to abuse, to cons, to an overdependence and reliance upon authority figures. I'm just baffled that people can think that this isn't somehow harmful. And the people who think that, you know, all harm is equal, I think they're shortchanging the real issue here.
Well, and anybody that says that this is trivial, I mean, you know, you mentioned Marlene Winnell and her religious trauma syndrome. I mean, you should see our email list sometimes. We get emails from people saying, hey, you know, I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist for a few years now, and I don't believe there's a God, but I can't get over my fear of hell. You know, how do you get past that? Does that ever get better?
What I find particularly offensive, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but what I find particularly offensive is that here's an individual whose brain has been polluted and poisoned by a particularly dastardly religious concept. And they have freed their mind from a lot of this stuff, but there's still this nagging thing clinging on. And there are asses out there who will look at that and say, see, somewhere in your subconscious level, you know all this is true. I see it over and over again. It drives me absolutely bonkers that somebody said that religion basically poisons you and then dangles the antidote in front of you. And this is kind of what they're doing in a sense in this context is you poison your mind, and then when you suffer the consequences of that poison, they say, see, you know, and we've got the cure, by the way. No, they don't have a cure. They are the poison. And while I do not claim that all religious teaching of children is necessarily child abuse, a great quantity of it is, to varying degrees. Some of it is rather innocent and easy to overcome in much the same way that certain stories about the holiday season that may not be true are relatively easy to overcome. And because in your real life, you're going to come up against things that are going to immediately expose those false teachings and will kind of be self-correcting. And so it'll be, oh, I believe something stupid for a while. All of us have believed something stupid for a while. There's an aspect where this is actually positive because it teaches you the process of learning and discovering what was wrong. There are other aspects of religious teaching that specifically set up barriers to that kind of discovery, and that is one aspect of what I would call child abuse.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Obviously, the one last thing that I want to ask, because they also brought it up, is some people just say, okay, it's true that some religious teaching can be child abuse, but so can other teaching as well. And they say that they give John Stuart Mill as an example. They say, he was brought up, his dad taught him, made him study science and philosophy all day, and he didn't have the option to have a normal childhood. So even science can be child abuse sometimes. What makes religion so different? Why? I mean, I obviously said that the frequency of religious indoctrination being child abuse is a lot higher, but can we say anything other than the frequency? Can we bring up any qualitative difference between
I don't know of
religious and other forms of child indoctrination?
I don't know of anybody who's is using science to indoctrinate their children into believing false things. I mean, that could be the case, but I don't think that if that is the case, then I don't think it's a very broad thing that's going on. And the other thing is that even in cases where it's obvious that parents are teaching their children patently false beliefs, people tend to look the other way. They tend to look the other way when somebody says, hey, the Bible says spare the rod, spoil the child, so I'm going to beat the hell out of my kids, and we'll call it discipline. I mean, the state of Texas specifically does that. And so, religion gets a pass on a lot of things that we wouldn't accept from anything else.
Yeah,
so there's a huge difference.
And to kind of answer a question that you brought up earlier about this idea of whether or not we would want all religious people put in jail or their kids taken away, of course not. That's insane. You go after the problems wherever they exist. If there's somebody who is what we're saying is that, as Jen just pointed out, religion tends to get a pass. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are pointing out the abusive nature of some religious teachings, because it's time for them to stop getting a pass. If somebody is engaging in child abuse with regard to forcing their children to do nothing but study science and have no fun or whatever else, then that's something that should be addressed as well. But I'm with Jen on the, I don't think that that's being used to lead somebody to a false belief. So it's, there may not be an easy answer here. The point is that religion shouldn't get a pass, and it does. It does across the board. This assumption that religious people are somehow better or immune from criticism or couldn't possibly be doing damage to their children. This is the reason why the pedophile scandals in churches has gone unchecked for so long. It's because religion gets a pass from the top down. Yeah.
He couldn't possibly have molested a child. He's a man of God.
I just can't believe that he would do that. Well, believe it, he did. And people are failing as parents.
Well, I think the difference between the rapes and the religious teachings is that in the first case, the rapers knew that they were doing something wrong, but from the perspective of the parent who's teaching religion to their children, they're not doing anything wrong. In fact, they think they're doing something wrong if they don't teach religion, because, I mean, they are saving the child's soul after all, and how can we convince them if, I just don't see a way to approach this problem other than just raising awareness, but I don't think that's very effective.
I think that's what you do.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
There are some issues where we're just going to have to wait for a generation or two to die off. As unfortunate as that is, you have to change the world around them. You can't always change the individuals. And I'd point out, by the way, that there are some pedophiles, in fact, probably quite a few, who do not think that they're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
That they think that their brain is so screwed up that they believe that they're doing something that is not necessarily wrong. They understand that society generally disagrees with it, but it's a confused perspective. But yeah, and we've got like 25 minutes left in the show with the short format, so I got to let you go, but thanks a lot for the call.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
All right. We've got Damon in Glasgow. How are you? Hello, Damon? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try that, Damon. Damon, you there?
Yes.
Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
Not bad. How are you guys?
Good.
First time caller here. I've actually emailed you guys a few times. I got a very lengthy reply from, I believe it was Tracy, a good while back about dealing with the default position of the supernatural from a theistic point of view rather than an atheistic point of view. I also sent an email to you, Matt, almost about 2 years ago. I started the Atheist Society, or what I call the Free Thinker Society at the University in Essex in England.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you. I haven't been involved with it since I graduated over a year ago, but hopefully it's doing well without me.
That's something you should probably check on, because one of the things about university groups is they tend to die off as we lose members for graduation.
Well, I emailed actually just today because I was thinking about calling up the show, so I thought I'd, the person I left in charge, I sent her an email. She hasn't replied back to me yet, but hopefully she will at some point. The main thing I wanted to call in about was how excruciatingly frustrating it gets trying to argue with people who have a theistic position when their entire argument is based on, oh, you don't know for sure, ergo, you can't disprove my position, therefore you are closed-minded for not accepting the possibility that something could be real.
Yeah.
It's just ludicrous, and it's a constant, it's a constant headache in your head. How the hell can you get around that kind of circular reasoning? Well, you can't disprove it, so ergo. And I've tried using arguments like, well, I can't disprove the existence of an invisible pink unicorn, but they're like, oh, that's just silly.
Yeah.
I mean, well, how's your position any different to that?
It's not. It's just as silly, and I'm one who's actually fine with pointing that out. One thing is I haven't tried this, but it might be worth a try, and that is to find out. Let's define exactly what they mean by closed-minded. Because it may be the case that by their definition of closed-minded, I am in fact closed-minded to claims that aren't supported by evidence. I'm not going to believe a claim that's not supported by an evidence, or by sufficient evidence. And if that makes me closed-minded in their definition, then I'll own up to that. But there's a difference between being not willing to believe something that's not supported by evidence and asserting that the thing is false and cannot be supported by evidence. Those are two completely different types of closed-mindedness.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but there's also at the same time, I can't stand this projecting that you get from theists, like, oh, well, you're just as closed-minded, you're just as absolute as any creationist or any Christian or any Muslim or whatever, because you have a position which you're not budging from. I'm not defending something that requires a burden of proof from my hand. I'm asking you to provide evidence for your position. Yeah. And again, it's like, oh, well, it's just the same thing, basically. It's like a constant wall of idiocy you're trying to break through, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, and it's demonstrably false to assert this thing that you're just as dogmatic. No, there's no dogmatic assertion here at all.
And just in response to the previous caller who was saying, because I was actually raised in Greece, which is a very conservatively Christian country. We've got forced prayers every morning at school, which the only way you can get exempt from is if your parents ask for an exemption. And when they ask for an exemption, they actually have to give a reason, and usually reasons we don't believe isn't good enough. You have to prove that you're actually a supporter or been raised in a different religion. So unless you're actually of another Christian denomination, a Jewish or Muslim, you're not actually supposed to be allowed off the prayer. And the only religious instruction in school is Christian Orthodox dogma. There's no comparison between religions. And as someone who I've never really had, I mean, you know how some people ask you, when did you lose your faith? Well, from my position, I never had any faith to lose. What I did was I lost my fear of damnation in hell. Like what you were saying earlier about some person who's actually an atheist over 10 years or so, but they still can't shake this notion of hell. I think that was the only thing that kept me believing or fearing till I was about 13 or 14. Then when I finally lost that, I don't know how, I just honestly can't remember how it happened. I just lost that. And ever since then, it's been a lot easier to cope with people, accusing you of being a bad person or saying, well, you're going to burn in hell and so on. How do you feel about that? But growing up in a country like Greece, thankfully I left when I was 16, but up until that point, going to school, fighting with teachers, because especially with the religious instruction teachers, they had absolutely no respect for anyone who had a differing point of view. My religious instruction teacher actually called my parents and asked permission to have me exercised.
Wow.
Apparently. Yes, apparently I was so bad because I was pointing out the flaws in what she was saying that, in her opinion, evolution was just some people found some skulls of monkeys that looked like human, and that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
and
that's what
convinced me. I tried to point out to her that it was more than that. I mean, of course, I didn't have the knowledge on evolution that I do now because evolution isn't taught in Greek school.
Yeah.
So whatever you had to find out, you had to find out from the library. And when I tried to point out, she was just saying, well, obviously the devil's gotten hold of you. I need to speak with your parents. This is really important.
Yeah.
Now,
and I'll say that I love going to Greece. Having been there a couple times, one of my favorite places to visit. I had no idea that the school situation was so kind of batshit crazy. Granted, I'm not up on Greek law or anything, but I think it's worth pointing out that if you feel the need to protect your religion by making it mandatory, you're probably admitting that there's no actual truth there, that there's nothing there that would actually convince somebody.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hold that position as well, but the Greek excuse to that is, we're defined as being Greek Orthodox. But the thing is, the way religion, because that's what you were saying, that some people lose their religion because it's no longer relevant to their daily lives.
Right.
Well, the Greek Orthodox Church has managed to circumvent that and actually get people to become members of the church, even if they have absolutely no belief whatsoever. I mean, all my friends, all my closest friends at least, have very little belief, if any. I mean, in the worst case, I call them deists. None of them are theists, and none of them are Christian by the strict definition of any church that I'm aware of. But for them, oh yes, when my parents die, I have to bury them and have to give them a Christian burial. When my children are born, I have to have them baptized. I have to get them their first Holy Communion. I'm going to get married in a church.
So this is all just about social obligations,
such an integral
then.
part of Greek society and Greek culture and identification. People just do it as, oh, well, I'm Greek, ergo I have to be Christian. And even if they don't believe in any of the supernatural entities and stories, and they'll actually defend that position when they think people are being anti-Greek, not anti-Christian anyway. Oh, if
Yeah,
you don't like...
it's a conflation that kind of borders on jingoism, where you're associating your nationality and your heritage with a particular religion, and we've seen it in the United States as well, where this is God's Christian nation and or Judeo-Christian, if we don't want to irk the Jewish population. And if you're a true American, you follow this, and this. You're going to see that all over the place. It's in some places, I guess, it's just a little more embarrassing and harmful. Not just embarrassing, but harmful than others. But
it's just, I just thought it was, it was because, of course, when we were saying about the previous caller, was he from Italy, I believe?
The previous caller was Bulgaria.
Bulgaria.
Oh, Bulgaria. Okay, well, neighboring countries. But the whole point is because I think it was on the news a couple of weeks ago that the European Parliament, after a decision in Strasbourg, have forced Italy to remove compulsory prayer from schools. And now I believe the Greek atheist community is trying to get the same decision applied in Greece. Therefore, children are naturally exempt from any religious instruction or indoctrination, unless they specifically request it, or the parents have to do. Of course, everyone's up in arms about that because they realize that, actually, no one's going to force feed us our religion. We're going to have to get off our own backsides and try and be Christians ourselves. So it's also this position that we're de facto default, but we don't really want to bother with it too much. We'll only get up in arms if we feel someone is threatening us about it.
Yeah, I think my position pretty much with regard to education. And on that note, Damon, I got to let you go because we've got all lines set up in like 12 minutes. But I think my de facto position on this is that parents are granted some autonomy, some rights as to what they teach their children at home. But when it comes to the schools, nobody, neither parents nor teachers, should be able to dictate that you're going to take this particular religious instruction as part of your schooling. In schools, we should be teaching them things that are, valuable and tied to reality. And I realize that, I'm not going to convince anybody, certainly not in an Orthodox nation, that that's the case. But there's a reason why churches have Sunday schools and things like that, and
Yeah.
other religious instruction, and that's because you can keep that in this realm, and in the actual educational realm, you just, apart from comparative religion studies and voluntary courses that are opt-in instead of opt-out, it shouldn't be an issue. But on that note, I gotta let you go. So thanks a lot for the call.
Just one last, just to let you know the position about how the education system works in Greece. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if it happens in other countries, but Greece, the Greek bishopry actually has their foot in the education department, and every book that's issued in the Greek public school actually says on behalf of the Department of Education and Religious Studies.
Yeah,
Greece. So
and that's
there's no
going to
actual duality between religion and education in Greece. It's under one heading. So.
Yeah, and that's going to be the case in any nation that doesn't have a proper separation of church and state. Any nation with a strong tie between the religion and the government, and it's something that people have to actually work to change. And whether or not it changes anytime soon is doubtful, I think. But
Okay.
Thanks a lot,
anyway,
Damon.
Thank you very much for taking my call, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
We've got, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on there. We've got, I think, less than 15 minutes left. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to all get better at this new format's something.
Yeah.
I'll try to make my answers shorter, and we need the callers to try and make their questions and points a little shorter too. So we've got North by God, Carolina. Really? Are you there?
Well, I'm right here.
Yeah, what's your
Okay.
name?
I'm going by FSM.
Oh, that's original.
Cool.
Well, I know, but I just don't want to say it out loud because I'm at work, actually, so.
Okay.
But unlike my twin sister, identical twin sister, IPU, so. But just a few things. North by God, Carolina. Don't you know that, son? But, oh, by the way, been watching your show on YouTube, and that's how I find you guys. But excellent. But I was going back to what you were saying there, Matt, about on your secular humanism or secular morality is superior. And I know that I saw that you got dragged down at the end about the specifics of what is good, what's bad, well, this thing, and like that helmet law. See, I personally agree with what you said about that people who don't want to wear helmets. That's their problem. They should, if you don't want to wear helmets, fine. Your insurance doesn't work. You have to pay for it. And then somebody, of course, pointed out that you're overweight. Okay, yeah, fine, thank you. But that's the thing I wanted to say is that one of the things about secularism that I noticed is that a lot of us try to take responsibility. We just don't have rights. We have responsibility. But a lot of the people I met, especially here where I work in North Carolina, it's like, well, I'm a Christian. I'm forgiven. I don't have to, I can do what I want because God knows that I'm a good person and I believe in Him and I'm going to go to heaven. So they don't take responsibility.
Sure.
And that's kind of something that I've noticed. But going back to that other thing, but just secularism, it's why does everybody keep on pointing out their rights and nobody points out what they do to deserve those rights, what their role is, what they have to do to, what their responsibilities are to society, not just to themselves.
Sure. That's a fair
I'll just
point.
stop it with that.
All right, thanks. Yeah, fair point.
Well,
it's an area that probably doesn't get discussed as much as it should.
Yeah, there was actually some a group of liberal pastors a few years ago that came up with this idea of like this ethical stewardship of the planet because they acknowledge the fact that global warming's happening and we're using up natural resources at an alarming rate, and that we should do something to like preserve these natural resources. And that got a lot of pushback from some very conservative denominations because their view was that, hey, God gave us this planet to subdue, and it's ours to do with as we will, and basically Jesus will come and get us before we use up everything anyway. So, interesting excuse for why they can't do anything.
Yep. All right, we've got Kevin in New York. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Right.
How's everything?
Pretty good. What you got?
Yeah, I called last week. I believe we talked a little bit. Figure we'll give some of the listeners what they want. Atheists. We talked about how sexual reproduction basically proves God exists.
Well, you talked about that.
Yeah, you said that.
No, I'm just saying. We were talking about it, and you didn't really give me a full opportunity to explain myself entirely.
All right, you have exactly 2 minutes, starting right now.
All right.
Go.
Basically, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You can't get the infant of any creature, any living thing, possibly without sexual reproduction. Basically, the chicken. What came first, the chicken or the egg?
The egg.
Yes.
The egg.
The egg, but I gave him 2 minutes. So.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I was just saying there's no proof that anything, can no baby can come from, nothing. There always has to be a mother. There always has to be parents, and there always has to be some kind of source where that came from. There's no evidence proven that anything, that life can just arise through natural causes. It's never been proven. I know you said the Miller experiment, the Miller-Urey experiment, and all that, and I said, that was like comparing, pile of bricks, and then that means you have a house. But that's all the Miller-Urey experiment proved. It said that amino acids can be created from scratch, but amino acids.
What does that have to do with sexual reproduction?
Say again?
What does that have to do with sexual reproduction?
No, I'm just saying, the Miller-Urey, well, it has to do with the fact that every single living thing on the earth is from sexual reproduction.
No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
What do you mean?
It isn't.
Have you not heard of asexual reproduction?
Say again?
Have you not heard of asexual reproduction?
Well, it's still sexual. That's still, well...
No, it's
no,
not.
it isn't.
Yeah, but you don't...
Have you not heard of parthenogenesis?
Even in asexual reproduction, that only means that one organism is the mother and the father, whereas sexual reproduction is two separate organisms.
Well, there's asexual...
It's still, the word sexual is still in there, so...
Oh, my... Well, all right.
Oh, holy crap.
Bye, Kevin. I don't have time to waste on that. Look up asexual reproduction, look up parthenogenesis, look up abiogenesis, and not just the Miller-Urey thing, look up John Oro's, look up a number of other things, and then look up the fallacy of this has not been proven, therefore I can assert that it's true. Even if we had no evidence of any living thing that did not come from sexual reproduction, it does not mean that that is necessarily the case. As a matter of fact, we have a good understanding, beginning from very early organisms through the current, pretty much exactly how it processed.
Yeah.
We know about common ancestry, we know about how sexual reproduction has been driven by natural selection, and we know all the way back, within reason, within some limits, to the original organisms, or we can as far back as we can identify, and we've demonstrated that the building blocks of life can come from non-living material through purely electrochemical means. Now, once you have that, not only, even before we had that, your bald assertion that we've only found white swans, therefore there are no black swans, is demonstrably illogical. But now that we've found those building blocks, now that we've found a mechanism that's possible, and while we don't understand everything, we don't know necessarily how it happened, or even if it happened here, or if there was panspermia or any other explanation of what exactly happened, what we know about what can happen means that you're just fractally wrong.
Yeah. Well, and if he wants an example of parthenogenesis, look up New Mexico whip-tailed lizards.
Yeah.
All
and there's been several other examples with there's a snake. Recently
yes.
They got some publicity.
Recently a snake.
A species that normally sexually reproduces that managed to do it without it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sharks.
The width and breadth of what we don't know is staggering, but it's not as staggering as what you don't know, apparently.
Yeah.
So I got James in New Jersey. How are you?
Oh, hi, good. I have a question about religious people and willful ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, my sister uses the same methods that religious people use in thinking.
I can't hardly hear you.
Oh, sorry. My sister uses the same methods in thinking as religious people do, and takes that to her education and everything else, and it's essentially destructive, and I can't point out to her why it's wrong that she's not thinking.
I'm not really sure
I don't know.
what you're asking.
I'm not. I'm not completely sure what you're asking. I mean, if you,
how do you confront someone with the fact that they're being willfully ignorant, like religious people?
well, there's lots of different ways. I mean, I tend to try to start with logical discussions and questioning presentations of evidence or providing evidence to the contrary. But if you find somebody who is so willfully ignorant that they clearly do not care about truth to the extent that they're willing to engage in critical thinking and examination of evidence, where they don't care enough to establish good standards of evidence, then what you need to do is find a way either to make them care about it, find a way to demonstrate that their particular evidential standards leads to false conclusions, or give up, because there's some people you're just not going to change.
Okay, but there's another thing here that I haven't specifically said. Another part of it is that not only does she not like to talk about like things like that, but whenever I talk to her, she tells me, "Oh, I don't want to hear those words that you're saying because they're large." And
then don't talk to her.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't run around knocking on people's doors asking if they've given up their belief in Jesus yet. People call the show. I don't go around to family and friends or people at dinner and randomly just accost them. If somebody doesn't want to have a conversation, you're wrong to push it.
I mean, no, I'm not even talking to them about those subjects. I'm just talking to like pass the salt, and it's like, oh, you're using large words or something like that.
Yeah, I don't buy it. Sorry.
Yeah.
If somebody's upset with you for saying pass the salt, then I don't know, maybe you should gesture.
Yeah.
But I don't buy it. And unfortunately, we only have 1 minute left, which means it would be a disservice to take. So the three of you that are on hold, hang on, and as long as they're not ready to tear down the studio, we will try to get some of the calls after the show. But I heard Frank say something, so no problem.
Okay.
There's the list of the people who actually make the show possible for Jen and I to sit up here. And as a reminder, after the show's over, we get together and go to Threadgills, which I didn't announce at all through the whole show. And you're welcome to come down as well. 301 West Riverside Drive. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. You don't have to be a member to attend any of our events. And we look forward to seeing you next week, hopefully with special guest Daryl Ray. See you.
Right.